Forget the fact that you don't want them. In fact, forget that you still believe they should be scrapped. Fact is, as of last week, the new e-toll tariffs are in place and enforceable. Or are they? Good evening and welcome to Interface. My name is Rams Mabote. Tonight we talk about the new tariffs as well as the concerns motorists still have. To discuss this, I'm joined by Howard Dembovsky of the Justice Project SA. We have extended an invitation to the South African Road Agency Limited, SANRAL, but they are not available to participate in this discussion. But as usual, please join us by commenting on our Facebook page, Interface on SABC2, or tweet at Interface on SABC. Howard, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
56 cents per kilometer down to 30 cents per kilometer, almost a 50% cut. We should be celebrating.
Absolutely. What a huge celebration. So we're going to rip you off a little bit less. The fact is that I don't think that anybody is celebrating, and I don't think that anybody is buying into this new dispensation, as it's called, because people have been vehemently opposed to e-tolling from day one, for a number of different reasons. And when one says forget about the fact that you don't like e-tolls, etc., etc., by whose decree should people forget about that? We live in a constitutional democracy. Mm-hmm. People have been told that a referendum is completely out of the question, and people have held their own referendum, and they've voted not to pay. So it's quite unfortunate that we have this kind of standoff that has come about. And,
but at some point, Howard,
and that's the fact.
Somebody has to pay for this infrastructure. Somebody has to pay for the improvement on the roads.
Absolutely. Who? Absolutely. Citizens who live in this country and pay taxes have to pay. It's a bit disingenuous to turn around and say people are not paying. If people weren't paying, we'd have no hospitals, we'd have no roads, we'd have no government buildings, we'd have no fancy cars with blue lights driving down freeways at 200 kilometers an hour, pushing everybody else out the way, would we now? Now, the fact is that citizens are paying, and they're getting a little bit tired of coughing up over and over and over and over again for the same things, and the money not being spent on what it should be spent on.
So is the opposition really, because I'm not too sure now, are we opposed to e-tolls, or are we opposed to the fact that the money is not going to where you think it should be going?
Well, I think people are generally opposed to a couple of things. I think this has sparked a wider issue, and I think we need to be very, very cognizant of that, because the possibility for a full-scale tax revolt is there. But the thing is that e-tolling as such is an inefficient system. It costs an enormous amount of money to administer. Almost R1 billion a year going out of the country says that it costs a lot of money to administer. And the fact is that you could have the fuel levy, or a fuel levy, or a levy on fuel. Doesn't matter how you semanticize this thing. That could be easily administered at zero cost and be put towards public infrastructure, which roads are. You know, it's very interesting that they draw draw this distinction between public and commercial infrastructure, where roads are not public infrastructure now they're commercial infrastructure. Well,
how are you going to
do you want unemployment? Is that
how are you going to administer a fuel levy? Specifically in the area where the tolls are, because the tolls are not all over the country.
No, they're not.
So you're going to punish the whole country for something that's...
Punish? Oh, I see. So in other words, let's punish Gauteng taxpayers.
Well, that's where the tolls are.
No, let's punish Gauteng taxpayers by charging them income tax, by charging them VAT, but let's stick to income tax, because they're employed. They must be punished for people in Limpopo and people in the Free State who are unemployed. Because
two wrongs don't make a
right.
No.
I agree with you. Mm-hmm. No wrongs make a right. The fact is that we can easily resolve this issue.
Tell me how.
Implement a fuel levy. Fuel levies are only paid by motorists. They are not paid by people who don't drive motor vehicles.
And a motorist in Kuruman would have to pay a fuel levy for the roads used by you and
well,
I in Gauteng.
I've heard that stupid argument as well, and it is a stupid argument. You could easily implement it just in Gauteng if that's what you wish to do. Okay, we have, after all, called this the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project, not the Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane Improvement Project. So, therefore, you can come back to that and implement just a provincial levy. But that is actually taking into account that you wish to say that the only place that development should take place is in the smallest province in South Africa, because it generates the most revenue for the fiscus. Well, yeah, okay, that's fine. So let's continue to have the largest province in South Africa with the least amount of people in it, which is the Northern Cape, have dongas for roads, to quote the Free State Premier.
Then let me go back to where we started. So the problem is not necessarily tolling the roads. The problem is the system that we use to administer the tolls. Is that what I'm hearing?
Most certainly. If you have a look at conventional toll roads, they do not cost as much to administer. However, they could be more easily funded through a fuel levy. And I think we need to actually point out something very important here. The SANRAL Act says that the South African National Roads Agency Limited is funded by the fuel levy, not a portion of the fuel levy. Go consult the legislation. And yet, our government chooses to say, no. We'll give them a portion of the fuel levy, and we must all be happy with that. Okay?
SANRAL tells us, and that's what also the Deputy President said when he announced the new tariffs, that there are more people now registering and more people are saying, look, there's been a reprieve, maybe we should take this new reprieve and move on with it.
Well, let's see the figures. But let's see real figures. Let's not see one figure coming out of the mouths of SANRAL, where they say 1.2 million people are registered for e-tags, and then have the minister stand up in Parliament and say, no, it's actually not 1.2 million, it's 800,000. Let's have a little bit of truth for a change. This is the big problem, because this is what has happened. SANRAL has adopted truth. Propaganda.
We need to take a break, but we've got to talk about this truth, your truth versus somebody else's truth.
No, the minister's truth. The minister's truth versus SANRAL's truth.
We come back, don't touch that dial. Welcome back. Our guest is Howard Dembovsky from the Justice Project SA, and we're talking tolls. Howard, you keep on referring to this thing about the truth. It is not a universal thing, is it? I mean, the truth you believe in should not necessarily discount somebody else's truth. Well, possibly not. SANRAL has had 5 judgments against them for misleading advertising by the Advertising Standards Authority, for lying to the public in their adverts. Okay, so obviously they were telling the truth. No, they were not necessarily telling the truth. They were telling their truth. But I'm saying, the fact is, there is one version of the truth. And I'm sorry to say this. There's always only one version of the truth, and that is the truth. It doesn't matter how one comes and spins it. It doesn't matter how many people that have actually been found to have committed perjury in front of a judicial commission you employ to be your spokesperson. It doesn't make any difference. The fact is the truth, and lies are lies. Well, I think the fact is the fact, but truth can be looked at differently. Let's talk about another fact. We now know that to enforce this, I may not be able to renew my license because I have not paid my e-tolls. Now, it's wonderful for your organization and everybody else to say, well, this is not right, there's no truth in this and that. I go to the traffic department, I can't renew my license. What then? Well, firstly, it's already been stated that could take up to 18 months to implement. It has not been put out to public comment for legislative change yet. Okay, when it is, trust me, it is going to get quite a lot of opposition to it. Let's put it that way. If it gets pushed through anyway, I suspect that we're going to see a lot of lawlessness, a lot more lawlessness on our roads. Is that the answer? And no, that's far from the answer. The big problem is that holding people hostage in that manner, firstly, it's unlawful. Secondly, it's unconstitutional. And thirdly,
it's not going to work. You are going to create an even bigger nation of artificial criminals, and that is a very bad idea. We would urge government not to do that. But the fact is that right now, your license disc may not be withheld on the basis of outstanding e-tolls. So please let's not send the impression that that is true. If you go and your license disc is refused to you, the reason is most likely because an enforcement order under the ART Act has been issued against your name because you've ignored a traffic fine.
Yeah.
Okay. The fact is that there is no legislative framework allowing this particular methodology. At the moment. If when they publish it for public comment, trust me, they're going to be taken on.
Let's go into another arena. Why would a government be deliberately unlawful and unconstitutional, in your view?
Well, I think let's just go back to a little while ago and ask Cabinet that very question. They ignored a court order. They defied a court order. They defied the Constitution and they defied the statutes of South Africa. I'm sorry, not in my view. Not in my view. Why would any government do that? Because they feel that they're above the law, possibly. I don't know. The fact is, we need to ask them. Don't ask me how you feel.
Oh, no, you said they were unlawful and unconstitutional. That's why I'm asking you the question.
They were unlawful and unconstitutional according to the courts. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you know it's as simple as that. So
I'm asking for your
we
opinion
can go
as,
no further.
You know, as Justice Project SA. Why do you think government would do that and ignore logic? Well, if we call it that.
It's an unfortunate thing that seems to be developing, that you believe that you can decree. It's very sad. And I hope that there is some form of change in thinking here, because, quite frankly, it's not doing anybody any good.
Is it possible, Howard, that government has also reached a point that says, we've tried, we've tried everything else. Now we've even taken the tariffs down. We've tried every little thing to help, for you guys, South Africans, to reach out to us now and at least participate in this program with us. You're not doing it, we're going to have to then enforce it one way or another.
We've pointed this out, and it's a very important issue. If you recall, the methodology of government and of SANRAL has been to threaten people with criminal convictions for not paying e-tolls. Now, the fact is that if you go and criminalize around about 1.5 million people in Gauteng, you will bring South Africa's economy to a halt. Very simple. Because the second you give them criminal records, they will become unemployable, they will not be able to get travel visas, etc., etc. And yes, you might say, oh, but people could easily avoid that by just doing the right thing and reaching into their pockets, taking the food out of their kids' mouths and paying the government's business partners in Austria. So, yeah, you know, Howard, it's a moral issue.
You know, on the screen we're showing the tariffs as they now roll out from the 2nd of July.
No, you're showing the caps, not the tariffs.
What's the difference, though? I mean, 125 rand for motorcyclists, 225 for light vehicles, you know, 875 for heavy duty.
Unfortunately, not all of us earn the kind of salaries you do, sir. Okay, the fact is that these are the stated caps. Do you know that there is absolutely no legislation preventing those caps from being changed? That's the first thing, at any stage. They can be changed at will at any time. The tariffs themselves may not be changed by more than the consumer price index. However, the caps may be. Now, we have got phases 2, 3, and 4 of the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project coming. So what's going to happen when they implement stage 2 is 225 going to become 450, and then 675, and then continue escalating up, or is it going to stick where it is right now?
We don't know.
No, we don't know.
Yes.
Okay, but we must put our trust in SANRAL.
So do we use a supposition to then disagree with what we have now?
We must put our trust in SANRAL. We must put our trust in SANRAL.
Who else do we then put our trust in?
Sorry?
You know, and Howard, all I'm trying to find out is, where do we go from here? You know, I'm more interested in...
Where do we go?
Here's a deadlock.
Here is something that is failing dismally. This is now the 6th time that they're launching it. They're telling us that you're paying 30 cents a kilometre. You talked about the tariffs. They're telling you that you're paying 30 cents a kilometre, so that if you climb onto the N1 North at Allendale Road and you drive towards Pretoria, you hit a gantry at Olifantsfontein and you pay the tariff. If you climb on at New Road, which is 5 kilometres further up the road, you pay that same tariff. So what is 5 times 30 cents? It's R1.50. Okay, sorry, but it's not 30 cents a kilometre, no matter how much you wish to spin this. I understand that what they're trying to do is to bring this down to something that people might be able to understand. And what they're leaving out is it's approximately 30 cents a kilometre, depending on where you join the freeway and depending on where you exit the freeway, etc., etc.
I'm going to take another break, but I want us to talk about really practical solutions when we come back so that, all of us walk away feeling that we're getting somewhere with this matter.
100%.
When we come back, we speak more with Howard Dembovsky. Welcome back. My guest is Howard Dembovsky, and we're going to try and find solutions now, Howard. I'm doing this, and by the way, we tried to invite SANRAL, and they couldn't make it to this conversation. And my job really is to try and ask the other questions that we would have asked of SANRAL and getting the answers from them. It's 6 times now that the government has launched this program. It's probably what we would call a 6th attempt to reach out to you and I. Why is it failing? Why can't we find something that works in this thing and move on?
We can. We can find something that works. There are alternative means to raise money for infrastructure. It's called taxes. Okay. The fact is, taxes are nothing new.
Tolling is a tax, isn't it?
Tolling is not a tax. They call it a service fee. That's what SANRAL calls it. Okay. So, with due respect, if it is a tax, then that's fine. Define it as a tax. Call it a tax. Okay, they have refuted every argument that it's a tax. Okay, so let's not even go there. All right, because tell me something. When last did you see VAT getting added to your income tax? VAT is charged on tolls, so it's not a tax. Right. The way to resolve this problem is really quite simple. It really is quite simple. The fact is that SANRAL boasts about, and the Department of Transport, boasts about South Africa's roads infrastructure comprising 750,000 kilometers. Okay, it's actually 760,000 kilometers. But call me a liar for 10,000 kilometers.
No.
However, okay, what they then fail to say is that the greatest portion of those roads are not tarred at all. Okay. Now, the fact is that we need to develop our infrastructure. South Africa doesn't want to remain in the dark ages, per se. We don't want to continue to be a third world country, etc. We want to have first world infrastructure. We want to have safe roads for people to drive on. Let's face it, a gravel road is not safe.
And
however,
we have e-tolls to raise funds to do that.
All right, so go put up an
ways?
e-toll road now on the road to Nkandla. Okay, go put up an e-toll road anywhere in KZN, actually, and just see what happens. Trust me, they've already said e-tolls are not going to KZN, but they're coming to the ANC in KZN has said, no way, you're not bringing it there. The fact is, okay, that you can raise money for infrastructure in a number of easy methodologies, and a lot of them, they can't be dodged. Let's be very frank. Can I ask you a question? Do you drive a motor car?
Certainly.
When last did you pull up to the fuel pump and say to the fuel attendant, fill it up, but I'm not paying you the fuel or the RAF levy?
I'm not that brave.
Well, I don't think anyone is, because I can tell you now, nobody has ever said that.
But what's the
point?
point?
The point is that you can't dodge it. The second that you have a situation where people have a choice between paying and not paying, a portion of people, it might be a small portion or it might be a large proportion, will choose not to pay. And that is what has happened with this e-tolling thing. How many people do you think refuse to pay tolls at conventional toll roads? Very few, trust me. Okay, the fact is this open road tolling might work very well in countries unlike Austria, which doesn't have it.
So the solution
Okay.
is
very one of the solutions is the fuel levy.
Okay.
The other solutions is to work with license discs. Okay, licensing fees. Our licensing fees, and this is not going to be popular with other people out there, trust me. Okay, our licensing fees in South Africa are actually quite low in comparison to the rest of the world. Okay, whilst our e-toll fees are amongst the highest. It's quite amazing.
Is that not a balancing act?
It's not a balancing act. Okay, how can this possibly be? But in any case,
if the fuel levy is such a great idea, if it works all over the world as you suggest, why would a government again ignore something like that?
well, it works in South Africa. The Road Accident Fund
Yes.
is funded 100% by the RAF levy contained in the fuel
why
price.
would a government?
Because the
of
deals
the
have
people-
already been signed. Let's face it, the deals have been signed with the third parties that are benefiting out of this
But they
thing
would still get paid
before
from the
it
fuel
helps
levy,
out.
won't they?
No, they wouldn't.
Why not?
No, because there's no administration. It's very simple. If you have to maintain these huge infrastructures to bill people, to chase up on those payments, etc., etc., do you think that people do that for charity? They don't do it for charity. If you have a 100% collection mechanism like the fuel levy, you don't need anybody to go and administer that, or at least you need very few. Let's put it that way. I don't think that it would be practical or truthful to turn around and say, well, nobody has to number crunch.
Finally, I've got 1 minute. Are we at a cul-de-sac?
I think that the decision will be made by the people themselves. At the end of the day, you can tell people that the rate per kilometre is 1 cent per kilometre. There are still people who will not pay, and there are still people who are prepared to go to jail for it. So it's a very sad situation. Yes, we are. And please don't come talk to me about compromise. Quite frankly, you know, I'm going to a little less is not a compromise.
We need compromises all the time. So
I'm going to a little less. I'll tell you what.
here's my last question.
Yes.
Very last question. Quickly, yes or no? Are you going to pay?
Me, personally, no.
How about Dembovsky? Justice Project SA, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for your time. This is the end of the program. From me, Rams Mabote, and the team, good night, and God bless.
SABC News presentation.